Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is a masterclass in React DevTools, just kind of showing you many of the features in React DevTools, how to use it to make your React development experience better. And basically the way the React DevTools work are pretty much the same way that like Angular, Vue, or Svelte's DevTools work. So, once you get the hang of doing it with React, there's an equivalent sort of experience with all the other major front-end frameworks, for the exception of Solid.js because it's just so new. I'm sure it'll eventually have that as well. But yeah, but I still always recommend dabbling in all the above because it's all really cool. Okay, so first off, the React DevTools is a Chrome extension. So you want to download Chrome and install the React DevTools. So see React Developer Tools for Chrome. So it's not something that's going to be out of the gate in your DevTools in your Chrome browser. You want to install it. So that's thing number one. Okay, now let's start a React project to try this out with. So I'm going to do npx create React app DevTools, yay. So I'm going to let that install. So create React app, it's doing its thing. Installing all the libraries, setting up my folder structure. I can kind of already go in here. We can start kind of working on our app.js. So now here what matters is what you call the function name of the particular component. So basically making sure that your functions have names is going to determine what you end up seeing in your DevTools. So right now there's nothing in my app component. So you see it's just an empty div. So we'll hit save. And again, this is assuming that you have some experience with React and you're familiar with the basics of React. I'm not going to go over the basics of how React works here. I do have separate videos for that. npm, well, first I want to cd into the folder, DevTools, yay, and then do npm start to start our development server. Okay, so here it's going to just be an empty page. There's our empty page of a React website. But just to show you, Control F, that's the Finder. Control Shift I to open up the inspector. What's going to happen is that once you install React DevTools, you're going to see this new section. There's this other section here called Profiler. I've never used this before, so I'm not sure what that does, but it is React related. But then there's this, and essentially the way this works is that it shows you your componentry in the same way that Elements shows you all your HTML tags and which HTML tags are nested in other HTML tags. This shows you which components you have and which components are nested in other components. Okay, so when I click on app, I see a few things. I see that this component is called app. I see that if this component has any props, I can see them here. So that way I know what data, and then that's like the most important thing, knowing that your components have the data you think they do. And if there were any hooks being used, they would be listed here too, but currently there aren't any. We'll use some just to show you. Okay, and then it shows you like sort of where does it come from. Okay, so this create legacy root is like React DOM.render. So when you see that, that means like this is like the thing that React DOM.render is rendering to the DOM. Okay, and again, if you don't remember what that is, if we go back to our index.js, we have this React DOM.render function. Okay, so that's rendering the app component to the DOM. So that's kind of where our application starts. And again, that's our app component. Okay, so let's add some other components. I don't feel like making a bunch of files, so I'm just going to create these components inside this file just to keep things simple. Okay, so let's say I create another component called cheese. And again, all a component is a function that returns JSX. So in this one, we'll accept props. So I can write multiple functions in the same file. Typically, you write your React code, you separate them into multiple files because it's just more organized, easier to think through. But again, they are just functions. You can define as many functions in one file as you want. So here's a function that returns h1. Okay, and what I want to have this one do is I'm going to have it render props.children. Now, if you're not familiar with what props.children does, is that it's going to make whatever this component wraps show up there. So essentially, if I do this, cheese, because now I've created this function, And essentially when I run this component cheese, it's just going to run this function. That's how it knows what to inject there. And the children would be anything above within these two tags. So we'll just say an h1 hello world. Okay, and then what I can do is I can just do like another cheese inside of that cheese. I will just say cheese in the cheese. Okay, so you can have components kind of like render themselves in a sense, because all this component is doing is rendering its children. So this cheese is rendering this h1, this cheese is rendering this text here. Now if I go to my DOM, see I see hello world and cheese in the cheese. Okay, now if I take a look at app, see, take a look at my DevTools, I have app and then cheese. Because I have this cheese that's nested inside this app component. So it says it's rendered by app. It's rendered by app. But this cheese is being rendered by this cheese component. So now look what happens when I look at that one. Well, this one's technically also being rendered by app. So when they show you rendered by, they're really saying like, where do you find the tag? Okay, so if I'm looking for like, where is this cheese tag? It's in the app component function. And that's why it's saying that there. Like if I created another component, bread, const bread equals props, return h2 that says bread, and then what I do is I'm going to put that inside of this h1 bread. Okay, it's all kind of convoluted, but so now I go in here and let's see what does it like. Oh, did I forget an equal sign? Oh, I wrote const bread. I should write function bread. Okay, refresh. Okay, so see there's like bread kind of injected there. Okay, now where did I write bread the second time? Oh, because I have two cheeses. Okay, so I have two cheeses, so you see bread twice. Okay, so you see now, you see like cheese, and bread. So basically what happens is we have app. Inside of app, we render this cheese, which renders this cheese, and this cheese is rendering a bread. But when I take a look at rendered by, it's telling you sort of the chain. It's saying, okay, cheese is who rendered me, because I'm in cheese's JSX, but cheese is rendered by app. So that's why it says like cheese, then app. So that way you can kind of see the chain, like bread was, in this case, was rendered by cheese, which was rendered by app. And if you want to look for where that code is, it's in this file right here, app.js10. So if I'm like figuring out like, hey, where is this component being used? Where should I go look? Here's the code. That's the line of code right there. But again, I can use the same component multiple times. And again, this is just showing me sort of like that individual bread component. So there's one bread that's being rendered by the nested cheese and one that's being rendered by this cheese. So that one's this one right here. Okay, and if I take a look at the cheeses, I can see that they're receiving the children props, which is just, you know, that JSX. Okay. So that's what that props.children is, because again, whatever you put inside of an opening closing tag for a component gets passed in as props.children. So that's just a little bonus lesson while we're at this. Cool. So now let's say I did pass some props to cheese. I go like explicit props. So I go we equals yay, whoa equals wah. Okay, there's some props. Now if I select this cheese, see this cheese has the two props because I pass props to, again, the component is just a thing that I can use over and over again. The props are passed to the individual instance of the component. So in this case, this cheese has these props, this cheese does not, because I never passed props into that instance of cheese, which is this one right here. Okay, so like that, that one did not receive props, but I can confirm that this one did receive it because I can see them right there. I can see my props in my DevTools. Yay! And again, props are always written in pretty much this syntax, with the exception of children.props. I mean props.children. But all the props are always written inside the opening tag of a component. Okay, so if I wanted to pass, a prop here, I could just be like umbrella equals cheese. So now if I go to the bread components, I see both of them have umbrella being cheese, because every cheese component, regardless of which one it is, passes umbrella equals cheese to the bread component that it renders, because that's how I designed the cheese function. Okay, so again, the point is you can see the data in here. Now you can also see hooks in there. So let's do some state. So let's say in the bread I create some state const. I need to import React. So actually let's import the useState hook. useState from React. So we'll say const state set state equals useState, and I'm going to set the state to 1. So there I created some state. Oh, this is supposed to be a string. You can tell as usual I just woke up. Okay, let's refresh. I think my server died. Yeah, it did. Okay. It died again. Oh, because this is supposed to be capital. That's React. There we go. That's why it keeps freaking out. There we go. So I open up DevTools. And I go to components. And again, we put that state in bread. And you see, like, bread has its internal state. So I can see a hook. We have a useState hook of cheese. Doesn't matter what I call the state. It's going to say state. Okay, now just to kind of show you like why it's important to use like named functions, I'll use like an arrow function. Okay, and I think this will still have a name. Let me think here. Well, actually, let me go make another component in another file just to kind of show you like which name always matters. So cheese dot, we'll call this Gouda.js. So first we'll do it as an arrow function, const Gouda. Actually, I'll just export it so that way it doesn't even have a name, so you can see what happens. Export const. No. I want to do export default. That way I can just do an arrow function like that. Props. And I won't even bother with let's do an implied return, so I'll use the parentheses. Then we'll just say an h1 that says Gouda. Okay, so there we go. Like that's a pretty like small component. Okay. That should work, even though it's giving me a warning. Okay, so now I go to app.js. I'm going to import, and we'll call it Gouda, the component, because we have to give it a name, whatever we're importing, from Gouda, or yeah, ./Gouda. There we go. And let me inject that out below cheese. Okay, so I'm injecting the Gouda component. I should see it now, so let me just go to the bottom. Yep, there it is. But now look what happened. It says anonymous. The reason being is that even though I call it Gouda in this file, it's going to use the name that I gave it in this file. Okay, it uses the context of the file where that component is defined to figure out what name it should be. So you see here, if I go to anonymous, it doesn't really know what's going on because I didn't give it a name. So now let's change that. Let's say I do this. I do this. I change that to const Gouda equals. Let's see if I do put it in a variable that has a name, and I'll call it Gouda cheese. Export default Gouda cheese. Should still work. See over here. But notice, in app.js, since again you can import the export default under any name you want, so I called it Gouda in this file. Because again, it's an export default, so it doesn't matter like what I call it in the other file. Whatever is export defaulted will always come out, and it'll just go into this variable when I don't use curly brackets like I did here. Okay, so in that case, it's called Gouda cheese in this file, but it's called Gouda in this file. Now I'll take a look at which name shows up in the DevTools. Gouda cheese. So again, the idea is that it's always going to use the name that you give the thing, the variable, the thing that holds it, in the original file where it's created, even if you import it under a different name. The reason that's important is just so that way, if you see unexpected names in your DevTools, you know like why. Okay, but we can see that one, I can click on any component, so I can click on different components to see their data. See the data changes right over here. I can click on bread, and I can even change it. I can even change the state from here. I can be like 5. Okay, and then I've changed the state in that bread. Yep, see it's 5 now, and that should reflect on the screen. Trying to think if there's any other fun things you can do. Actually, I don't think I've tried this before. Let's see what happens if I do that. Okay, so that's if you're using Suspense, which is an experimental feature. Oh, okay, that's cool. So basically, I can click this. And then what this will do is it's going to take me to the Elements tab and show me the specific HTML that this component's rendering. So if I go boop, and there, see like that particular component is generating this part of the HTML. This H2, this is bread. So if you want to just kind of find if you're really trying to like style the HTML or edit something, and you're just trying to find like that part, but like the HTML gets there's a lot of HTML, and you just want to kind of get right to it, you can just click on the component you're looking for, click on this little eyeball here, and it'll show you exactly where that component starts. And see, like this is the H1, that is the cheese component, and inside the H1 is what was inside props.children. There it is. Okay, so that's pretty cool. And let's take a look at this last one. Okay, and this will log the data too. So if I click on this component here, actually let's use the bread with the state here. If I were to click this, let me go to my console, and see here it console logged that particular component's data. So I can see all the data in that component. I can see its props, I can see its hooks. I don't need to do my own console logs. I could just go over here to components, find the components whose data I want to double check, and then just click here to console log it. And then let's see what this last one does. View source. And this actually takes us to the source code for that particular component, so we can see the code for that component and how that component is built. Okay, so that's pretty cool too. So that way, if you're wondering like how does a certain component work, I can go in here and take a look. Okay, like where is that component defined? So I can see what it's doing. So I can see, hey, look, bread just really generates that H2 that says bread. Okay. So that's pretty cool. Also, if you have like a lot of components, it might be hard to find. So maybe I'm looking for that Gouda cheese component, and then now I can see like, oh, there it is. Okay, so that's pretty nice. And what is this one? And this will just select something. And see how I highlighted this bread component because like that's what I clicked on. Okay, if I click on cheese and cheese, well, I think I clicked on the wrong thing. Click on this one. I click on that. Yeah, see, it highlights whatever component I'm kind of like highlighting. Here I can see like my previous searches. I can clear the search, and then here we just have some settings. I've never actually had to use this. Let's see. Let's try out this profiler. So I'm gonna refresh the page, and okay, so I have the thing on. I'm gonna refresh the page, see if it. Yeah, no. I think what this is gonna do is that you hit record, and if there is like state changes or whatnot, it's gonna capture that. So let's actually try that out. So let me go back to my bread component because that's where I have state, and let's just quickly create a function that'll increase the state const. Actually, I'll just make it simple. We'll just put it inline event handler. So on click equals set state plus 1. So anytime I click on the H2, it'll add 1 to the state. And going forward, it's just going to show the state instead of bread. Okay, so we see 1. Now I'm going to hit record here in the profiler, and I'm going to click here. Now if I hit stop recording. Okay, so what are we seeing? So I think this is showing us the order which things are rendering. Okay, app did not render. So every time I change the state, what did render and what didn't re-render, or like what changed. So in this case, because what happens when you change state, certain components may render, certain components may not. So I can see that, hey, like this did not render during the record time. Like none of these components ever rebuilt themselves. The only one that re-rendered was bread, and it did it within like 1 millisecond. So this is the idea here, is to help measure like time in case like something's taking a really long time. And I can see which components are taking the longest to render, so that way I can optimize like the time. And that looks like to be what this is for. Okay, so okay, so here we go, start profiling, and I can refresh the page. Okay, and then I click this, and I hit stop. Okay, and see that includes the initial render, so I can see like how long did that initial render take. So because it's from this refreshed the page without resetting the DevTools. So look what happened. Like app took 6.6 milliseconds. So overall, like that initial render took 6.2 milliseconds, of which 0.6 milliseconds was app. Cheese was 0.1. Yeah, so app seemed to be the one that took the longest, etc. Well, that's essentially what this is. So this is more for like performance improving, which again, not something I'd be, if you're new to React, I'd be immediately concerned about until you have an app, it does the thing you want to do, and now you just want to make it better. You can use this to kind of identify where you can make improvements. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Hopefully this gives you a better idea how to use your React DevTools. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Make sure to head over to devnursery.com, join the Slack and Discord community. I'll see you all there. Have a great day and enjoy.